Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this is the big one.
That's what she said.
The backyard garden bed for my summer 2023 update tour inventory videos that I'm doing. So I think we want to get that started off the proper way. And with that, let's start with this tree. This is a Chickasaw plum. And the reason why I want to start with this tree is there's still plums on it. This particular Chickasaw has yellow colored plums. It's the only Chickasaw plum tree that I have with yellow plums. All the rest of them have red plums. This is something that does happen. It is a thing. There's nothing wrong with the tree. It's just every now and then the genetics, and that's one of the things that happens with wild plants. The genetics just happen to produce a different color, which is really cool. And we have been eating our fill of plums. So those are probably the only 2 plums you'll see on this tree. If you look, there's several plums that I never got that have just fallen on the ground. And yes, they will sprout from seed. The squirrels did take a good amount of them. For some reason, they went after them this year before they were even ripe. But even with all of that, even with there was some kind of bug, I forget the name, I'll probably annotate to put it up there, that we found that had infected some of the fruit with their larvae. But even with all of that, we've had buckets and buckets of plum. We can't even keep up eating them. So probably have to turn some of it into jelly. Below that plum tree, we have mint, common mint. And I used to have it growing in this complete empty spot. And I planted a new variety of mint there, and it's still alive. Let's see if we can get it on camera here. You see it's barely holding on. So we'll see what happens with that. And in front of that plum, I have my dwarf moonglow pear, which in the spring, the very, very early spring, it got too wet. And so we had some dieback here at the tips, but now that it's dried out pretty good, it's come back nicely. And let's get into this. What we have here is a commercial plum. I believe it's called a wild goose plum. And in my first video where I did the update, I told the story as to why it's called the wild goose plum. But if you care to know that story, you can go watch that video. And this tree and this tree are American plums. The only 2 surviving American plums other than the new one I planted this year. I've dug up, so they like to send out suckers as well. There's one right here. And I've dug up a few so I can backfill for the ones that died. Because I only had the one backfilled, if you will. And on this garden bed that I'm in with these trees that I'm showing you is not complete. You can see here I'm starting to convert the soil, mostly just using wood chips. We'll see in future videos what I end up doing there. About 15 feet away from this Chickasaw that I started with, it sent out a sucker. And that's what you're looking at here, another tree, which I think I may leave it there. Still haven't decided. Okay, now what I have here, this tall grass, what's mixed in is prairie tea. I'll get you a picture of that right here, this prairie tea. Very useful plant and also delicious. All right, and this is my coral honeysuckle. Yeah, I built a little archway and with some 2 pieces of rebar and some T-posts, and then some scrap sticks from all the cedar that I harvest, or ash juniper, I should say. I'm just weaving it through, and it seems to be thriving pretty well. Coral honeysuckle. I'm going to skip off to the back here into my my little sunflower jungle, and see at the base of this tree I have malbar spinach growing nicely. And next to this log pile, I have arugula. So there's a couple of them here. I had it growing all around, but because of the sunflowers, it didn't all make it. And I have some arugula here. When I come through the backside, I'll probably give you another shot, but I'm mainly just growing it so it goes to seed, and I'm going to collect the seeds. As I mentioned, I scaled back what I usually grow for this year, and I'm pretty much just growing things for seed. So at the base of this tree, and this tree is a female ash juniper, and I have a tree trimming video for it. I have some malbar spinach, just like the other tree over there. And this is an old male ash juniper that is now dead because I got overzealous with the trimming, and it's just got a huge patch of malbar spinach growing at it. Okay, let's see here. So last year I had this pile of dead limbs, and I said I'm converting the soil. I'm using these ash juniper leaves to convert the soil to turn it into another garden bed. And I do it. It's a slow, iterative process, and I've actually planted more in it this year than I have in previous years. So I actually still have a malbar spinach just barely holding on, and I still haven't done any supplemental water. This is all just from what comes out of the sky. And so we'll start over here. This is comfrey, and I have a pumpkin growing in there. So our Halloween pumpkin we just threw in here with these limbs to break down, and it sprouted a pumpkin. And I have 2 tree collard, Richmond's purple tree collard. You can see I'm doing absolutely nothing to try to keep the pests off of it. Because I'm only going to grow it for cuttings. I don't think tree collard is a great permaculture crop for this area, but I'm still not quite ready to let it go extinct on the property. And you can see it's got some new growth, and hopefully it lives. If not, I'm done. And we have some more butternut squash, and I have some watermelon, Desert King watermelon, which is taking off nicely. I think we have a couple plants here, and you'll notice there's plenty of tomato. And I mentioned this in some past videos, but you can see the tomato all back here, and I don't have a tomato cage or a trellis around it. What I have found is that if you let it grow in this fashion, you end up with just as many tomatoes. And you can plant in between the tomatoes, and whatever you plant typically provides shade for the tomatoes, and in this area they tend to like that shade. So I started it kind of as an experiment. I just kind of planted some tomatoes here because I had some extra ones, and I just didn't put any effort and just let them grow this way, and I noticed they ended up growing better, and they self-seed. So every one of these are grown from an ancestor that self-seeded. So there's, let's see how many I have here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on this side of the row. 5 tomatoes, and mixed in we have watermelon and butternut. Here's another butternut squash, all mixed in. And I do let some of the tomatoes just fall, because that means next year, it gives me the genetics to see, what can actually self-seed. And on this side, the front, I didn't plant anything in here last year, but this year I've got a black nebula carrot, which I'm growing for seed. Gonna cut in real quick because I noticed this little guy in editing. This is a little butternut squash I failed to even notice when I made the video. And this right here, I want to say is probably arugula. No, I got that wrong. That's actually a golden beet, and I'm growing it just for seed. I really don't remember what it is, but I think it's probably arugula. And I've got southern curly leaf mustard growing for seed, and another little watermelon, and a butternut squash. Of course, you'll see all of the sunflowers mixed in, which I use for shade and pollinator food and living trellis. So that pretty much covers this bed in the backyard. And I'll take you over to my failed cut flower bed. And you see the dianthus still holding strong. And I had a ground cover flower that actually, I thought it was gone, but it's actually still alive. And it's right there. It's like a little purple ground cover flower. I forget what it's called, but it's a domesticated variety. Mostly what you see in here is dandelion. It's just all mixed in. And my dahlia hasn't come up this year, but hopefully it will. I got one comfrey still in there. I've removed all the comfrey and transplanted it into other places. And I have a carrot and a beet growing in there. And oh, there's a turnip as well, right there. A little turnip. Growing them for seed to keep my seed bank going. And somehow see if I get closer to it, an asparagus has managed to seed itself over here and kind of left it. One of these days, I don't think this will ever be a good cut flower bed because of all the trees. So if we move up, all of these are Chickasaw plum. There's one, there's one. What you see here in these circles is some wild lettuce that I missed when I made the video. I actually have a couple videos on the wild lettuce, which actually is the ancestor of all lettuce, or most of it at least. Can't see. There's one, there's another one. And out here on the outer edge of that Chickasaw plum bed, I have this heritage rose, which had roses until recently. And let's see here, we'll keep on moving around. There are dormant flowers here. There's a native daffodil that I found in East Texas that I planted in here. And I know there's some onions that have gone down, and if you look right here, this is cilantro. So cilantro grows in here pretty good. Now look at this limb in my way. If you look, see this? I'm going to cut this limb. Why is it bowed over and in my way now? Because earlier it was just completely covered in fruit. So if you have apple trees or pear trees or even peach trees, if you have a limb like this and it bows over like that, actually it's a good thing because of the growth habit. If you have it upright like this, it'll send out most of its new limbs just going straight up. But when it falls over like this, those limbs just kind of come out horizontally and stay that way. Of course, this is too low to the ground and I don't want it here, and I've got so many more limbs much higher up where I'd rather have the fruit and it keeps it away from the squirrels. So I'll be taking this limb out, of course, but I just wanted to leave it there for this video just to show you, some of the effects that a lot of fruit can have, and how your first instinct may be to cut that limb, and maybe you shouldn't. So we'll get in here on this. Got some of the red plums, the Chickasaws, same species as the yellow ones, but just different genetics. There's a couple still on there. And we have another rose bush growing up in some shade, but it doesn't seem to mind too much. And behind that, this larger tree is a nectarine. I have still not unlocked the secret to nectarines. The first year they fruited, we had tons of nectarines, and ever since then, I haven't been able to get any to come to harvest. Or I've had a few, but not on that particular tree. And this tree behind it is a different variety of nectarine, and it still has some nectarines on it. They haven't ripened yet. Let me get in there. Yeah, right there. Yeah. And there's some more at the top that, right. See if I don't know if it's going to come out on camera, but right there. Hopefully it does. We'll see when we get into editing. And while I'm here, I might as well film this. So look at the ground, there's nothing growing, and all of it's dead. It's because all of this is the broadleaf dock. So I have to find a crop that grows in the shade in the summer that starts growing when this goes dormant. I'll do some work and figure that out. But while I'm here, we have a pear tree, and I have a lot of work to do to prune this guy. So you can see a lot of these limbs that go straight up right off of a lateral branch, and those have to go. But I didn't get any flowers on this guy this year, and from what I understand, that's probably because I have too many limbs. I need to trim it down. Okay, I just made myself a liar. I actually must have gotten flowers this year, because if you look, see way up here, there is a pear on the tree. I may have to, yeah, right there. think that's what I'm seeing. Yeah, I can see with my eyes. We'll see if it comes out on camera. Bear with the amateur cameraman, please. And as I'm walking back to the left of my nectarine, we have a fig tree. And yes, there are figs on it. What kind of fig? Celeste fig. There's loads of figs on it. And I'd noticed that it doesn't like the direct sun. It likes to have some shade. And as I'm walking out, we have a nanking cherry. In front of that, we have a couple of quince, one there, one there. And to the left of it, nestled in some shade, which is what I've found to be what it prefers to grow in this climate, is another elderberry. This one's probably about 5.5 foot tall. And it's sending out suckers, which I'm going to let grow. Hopefully they all grow. The late summer is hard on the elderberry, so we'll see. Stepping completely out towards the front, next to those quinces I showed you, I have a dwarf mulberry, dwarf black mulberry. And to the right of the elderberry, oh yeah, that's a nice little fig sticking out there. Anyway, to the right of the elderberry, I have a dwarf nectarine. And there may be some nectarines tucked up in there. Yeah, there sure are. There's one right there. We'll see what happens with that. So this one's always produced for me. I believe it's the variety is Garden Delight. And here at my feet, I have just another huge patch of that prairie tea. And then we come to what I call my turmeric bed, but sadly, all the turmeric is gone. I'm going to step out to the other side. It'll be easier to film. I have tried to grow turmeric for years. It's been 6 years now that I've tried to grow turmeric, and it'll grow for a couple of years, maybe 3 years, but eventually it just succumbs, it just dies. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I'll keep trying, maybe, but I think what I might do is I might fill this in with a different type of crop. And what I've started filling it in with is fuzzy bean, got plenty of that, and peanuts, got plenty of peanuts in there. So I might just make this a peanut patch. I know I had another peanut somewhere. I won't waste your time searching for it. And yeah, I got some onions, some wild onions, native wild onions that are going to seed, and some garlic that's going to seed. And behind that I have a quince. And in my video, my chili pekin video, I had a very large chili pekin bush. And here you have it. This is the regrowth for this year. It's a bit more shaded this year than it was the first year it grew, but it seems to be doing okay. Hopefully by the end of summer, which is when I did that video, or their September, it'll be as big as it was. And I have a Georgia collard that's been crossed with a tree collard, and it seems to be doing all right. And behind that, I have a perennial arugula, wild rocket. Comes back year after year, just keeps growing. I need to get it some more sunlight. And next to that, I have a very large Georgia collard, which is here because it's produced copious amounts of seed, which I need to get off of here and store in my seed bank. I don't know if it's going to live after that. It is sending out some new growth, but it's become quite shaded over here, so I don't know if I'll continue to grow Georgia collard this far back into the canopy. But one thing I do have is a carrot right there, and I think that's about it. Well, I mean, of course, we got some dormant garlic, it's going dormant, and we have a wild onion that's going to seed and go dormant. And at the very back of that bed, we have another fig. This is a brown turkey fig, which I think is a much better variety to grow in this area. And as we keep going back, you saw the Garden Delight nectarine, and behind that I have what I call gift nectarine, or maybe trash nectarine, because I don't know what variety it is. But last year during the drought, it was the only one that produced fruit, and I need to get in here and prune it something fierce. So the fruit that's on it is kind of undersized. It doesn't look too good. Again, I haven't put enough effort into learning how to do my nectarines, but I was more feverishly just trying to get them in the ground. We'll see what comes of it. Still growing well though. All right, so here in the back, I've been trying to get flame leaf or prairie sumac growing, and I planted a bunch of seeds, but none of them came up. I have some peanuts, oddly dispersed here and there, and on that brown turkey fig, I have a Mustang grape that's decided to run up through it and start growing. You can see it starting to sticking up back there, and what I want to do is run it towards the canopy this way and let it just start going nuts throughout there, like a natural living trellis. So I'll probably film. I planted this last year, which is a nanking cherry, right behind that fig, and then I've got a whole row, I believe it's 3 quinces, quite large quinces. At least the largest ones I have on my property. Let's move this limb out of the way. Yeah, you can see we have some quince here. That's one other one. And then we have one here in the middle. And behind that we have some lemon balm, which is doing okay. And this is a nanking cherry I planted this year, not doing too well. It's a bit dry. Everything I plant here is a bit dry. I have a self-seeded basil, which I was real happy to get. It's not the variety I wanted. I wanted self-seeded purple basil, but I'll take it. Self-seeded basil in this area is fine with me. If you know anything about this channel, you know that's my main philosophy. If it doesn't self-seed or self-propagate, I'm not really that interested in it. And next to that basil, I have another Garden Delight nectarine. Let's see if we got any nectarines in there. I don't know. Don't see any offhand. See, yeah. Next to the basil, of course, I got this nanking cherry I planted. I had it in a pot for 3 years and planted it here, and it seems to be doing okay. It's sending out new growth. So it got dry on us. And then this nanking cherry is probably the oldest one on the property, and it produced cherries this year. They were actually pretty tasty. We got some common mint mixed in here, and of course you've been seeing the sunflowers, almost like background noise at this point. And another nanking cherry, sending out some new growth with fuzzy bean growing all up over it. Fuzzy bean is this 3-leaf legume here. So, or it's a pea. So I might need to get this fuzzy bean. Fuzzy bean can like get out of hand, so you do have to manage it. But for now it seems to be okay. All right, so this bucket that you're seeing, I did a video when I made it. And I mentioned that the soil level would sink because of the way I made it. There's rotten limbs down at the bottom, and as they rot, it's going to sink, and that is indeed what happened. We planted potatoes in it, and they grew, and we harvested them. They were delicious, and I didn't plant anything in it, so these sunflowers decided to put themselves there. And I said, why not? I'm just going to leave them, and whenever the sunflowers are done doing their thing, I'll just snip them off the base and leave the roots in, and then probably top it off with soil and plant in it either in the fall or in the spring of next year. All right, I'm just going to walk on the outside of this backyard garden bed here, make sure I didn't miss anything. And it doesn't look like I did. Okay, yeah. Let's take a walk over to that arugula so I can get a better shot of that. So the next garden bed up for grabs here, what I'll be filming will be this guy. And that goes all the way back to here. So that, I think I called that the root crop garden bed last year. This is worth taking a moment. So in place of those broadleaf dock that I showed you around the pear tree, I've let sunflowers just go nuts. Nice pretty sunflowers. Maybe it'll be my thumbnail. Very important for pollinator food. The petals are edible for sure on the native sunflower. Not quite sure about the rest of it. I've read some archaeological reports that some of the roots and some of the, there's a way to prepare the leaves to make them edible, but I do know a closely related species. The sunchoke is, the roots are definitely edible. So maybe I'll try it one day and see if they are. All right, so let's get to that arugula. and then we will finish. Yeah, here you go. Yeah, this is a cultivated variety, a domesticated arugula, and I've got it growing all the way back here. It's probably about 2.5 square feet of arugula. A little patch growing in mostly shade. I'm just basically letting it grow so it seeds, and so I can collect those seeds. And I think that will conclude the backyard garden bed. Y'all have a good one, folks.